Good afternoon, Radio Maria Island listeners. Thank you for joining us for another very exciting episode of Encounter. Myself and Dion are joined by a very special guest today who's going to be sharing her faith journey. Dion, who's the guest today?
Well, I guess for those of you who've been keeping up with our socials, will notice that there was a little mystery post put up on our Instagram account. So our guest is all the way from Wicklow today, and her name is Eleanor.
Eleanor, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
We're excited to have you on.
What do you think of our studio?
I think it's super cool. Super cool.
Nice.
For any of our listeners listening on the radio, we are broadcasting this also on our YouTube page, where you will get to see our, in my opinion, very cool studio.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you check that out, Radio Maria Island on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get right into the testimony, Dion.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you could maybe start off by telling us who you are and where you're from.
Okay, I'm Eleanor. I'm from Wicklow. I'm 22 and I'm in Trinity College.
Mm-hmm. Great. And maybe a little bit of background as well as to, like, are you in college or are you working?
So I'm just going to graduate this year. I have no real plans, but we'll see what happens. Yeah.
And sort of where does your sort of interests lie with regard to?
Well, I studied biomedical science, but I'm not really interested in science. So I'm going to take a completely different route and do something more creative, maybe fashion or just...
Okay, fashionista.
Yeah, something
interesting.
Different.
That's so cool. And I suppose if you could maybe give us a bit of background on your sort of upbringing as well, and maybe how that linked into your faith.
Yeah, I would say that I grew up culturally Catholic, and it was kind of like, if you lose your keys, you're praying to St. Anthony, kind of, just the general stuff. We only went to Mass like at Christmas, that kind of way. It was there. Yeah. And in hindsight, you can see that God was always there, but not as much now. Do you know what I mean? Like it was very in the background.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and I went to a Catholic school as well. So I think that it all gave a very nice base for the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And where did it kind of change?
It changed when I was about 17. My school did a trip to Medjugorje, and I wasn't supposed to be on the trip. But I remember my brother went and he said he loved it. And I always kind of thought, I'm going to end up going. And then I just never signed up for it. Mm-hmm. And a week before the trip, one of the guys dropped out and they were like, Eleanor, can you please come with us? We have a space. And we need someone to fill it because we paid for it and all. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'll go. And I honestly, I didn't even know how to say a Hail Mary at that point. Like really so little to do with religion. But yeah, I went and I absolutely loved it and it changed my life.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay. Well, a few years prior to that, I was very much questioning whether God was real or not. I was kind of with science, how could it be possible? They don't really go together. And then a lecturer came in, he was a priest, and he was like, everyone says science and religion doesn't go together. This was my major question. And this guy just came into our school answering my question. And it turned out that they actually complement each other. And I feel like all the science that we have, all the scientists at the start really were trying to prove that God existed. And they were trying to study the beautiful world that God had made. And realizing that, I was like, okay, well, that's not something that I have to question anymore. I was like, that's not part of it. And then going to Medjugorje, I was quite sick at the time. I had severe anxiety. I was fainting and I was getting sick all the time. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to hang out with my friends because I was really not well. And I was worried about going to Medjugorje because I was like, I'm going to be not well over there and I'm not going to be at home. I'm not going to have my mom to look after me. And I went and I was completely fine. I felt absolutely fine. I think the whole anxiety thing, it was from this this fear that I wasn't going to succeed in my career.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As in, like, I was like, I wanted to be an actress, and I was like, I'm 17, I'm so old, I'm not going to be able to like get there. I have to be acting for 10 years, and I just felt so behind, and I felt like this huge, immense pressure that I had to be something more. And when I went to Medjugorje, it was like the Lord told me, just let go. Just let go. You don't have to do any of that. You're fine. If you're just with me, you're fine. And all that pressure just went away. It was like I was filled with this like light in my chest where it was just peaceful. It was just so peaceful. I didn't feel that pressure anymore. I could breathe again. It felt like I hadn't been breathing for like 3 years. And it was just the most amazing feeling. It's so hard to explain, but it was the most amazing feeling. And then I was like, okay, God exists, which is like it's a major thing. God exists. Like that's huge. That changes everything. Going forward, when you know that God exists, that changes absolutely everything. Yeah.
And how did that kind of, I guess immediately, how did that change sort of your day-to-day routine? And I guess over time, how did that kind of evolve?
Well, at the start, not much.
Okay.
Because I was only like kind of, I knew very little tradition around Catholicism, but you know, I honestly, I didn't pray that much. I remember going to confession in Medjugorje. I don't even think I did my penitence afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I knew so little. I was just there. I just showed up. I went home and I was telling everyone about it. That was one thing I kept telling everyone: you have to go to Medjugorje. You have to go to Medjugorje. God is real. And like people would laugh at me because they were like, "What are you on about? Like this is insane."
Yeah.
But I knew it was real. And then during COVID, that was like 3 years later.
Okay.
I had nothing to do, and I saw a Bible on the bookshelf, and I was like, I'm going to read that. And I did, and I got to know the character of Jesus. And it turned out that he's absolutely amazing, and he's entirely different than I thought he was.
Right.
Did you know the story of Martha and Mary in the Bible?
Yeah.
Where Martha's like getting all like the house together and like preparing for guests, and Mary's just sitting at Jesus's feet, and she's just like there with the Lord, and she's giving out, or Martha's giving out to Mary, being like, you know, help me, and like you have to prepare, and Jesus is like, no, leave her, and let her just sit there. I think that story spoke out to me the most, because it was like that was all the Lord had asked for me, was to just sit with him.
Right.
And it was so kind and so gentle, and he asked nothing of me but just to like know him.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a major turning point as well. Yeah, just knowing that like I didn't have to fight for his attention.
Right.
And I didn't have to be anything spectacular. I didn't have to, you know, be more than just sitting with him.
You mentioned that when you read the Bible, you got to know who Jesus was, and it was different than your original idea of that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
To be honest, because before that point, like before Medjugorje, I had no clue about any of it. Like I didn't even know what the Bible was. I thought it was like a set of rules or just like a book of prayers. I had no clue. And it turned out that it was like, you know, this whole entire story in history that has like happened. And I suppose I would have thought that Jesus was like really harsh, or that he expected so much from us. To be honest, I was kind of oblivious though.
Right.
With that being said, I was super oblivious. Like none of it was, I wasn't thinking about any of it. It was like I had been oblivious to religion and a relationship with God for so long that it was kind of getting to know him for the first time as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there were only little ideas of what Jesus was.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not what I expected though.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Saints Mary and Martha, because he was actually a feast day today.
Is
Which I think is yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh,
that's really cool.
amazing.
And this happened. Your trip to Medjugorje was When was this again?
That was 2017.
2017. So you would have been in school at the time?
It was a fifth year trip they did.
Okay, yeah.
And they do it every year. And yeah, no, that was amazing.
What was your experience maybe coming back to school after you had that sort of experience?
Honestly, I never talked to anyone about it in school.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time it was a very personal thing that had happened because, like I said, I was quite sick with anxiety. I was literally sick with anxiety. And I didn't want to talk about that either. Like now I don't care.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I'll tell everyone.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it was a very gradual thing. It was a process. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened straight away apart from feeling better. Mm-hmm. Getting to know God, like that was really gradual. Like I'm still getting to know God. Do you know what I mean? I think that really came to being during COVID. It was like I had no choice but to like face God then. But coming back straight away, I suppose I would be more vocal about the experience I had with, like, say, family and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, straight away. I almost didn't believe what happened at first. Do you know? I was like, did I experience something over there? Was it? But, you see the fruit that it bears. You can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears. And looking back, it was always like every time I looked back, I would see a difference that Medjugorje had made rather than right in that moment. Mm-hmm. It was all hindsight.
Mm-hmm. Fair. And what about when you, I suppose, made the move to college? Do you find this, I suppose you were able to take those next steps that you were maybe slightly reluctant to when you were in school? Or was it like, was it easier to have maybe a community that you didn't have in school?
No, I didn't even know there was a Catholic society in college. And I was only in for one semester before COVID had happened in the lockdown. Mm-hmm. So I had like 2 friends, neither of them were Catholic or religious. And they didn't want to do what I was interested in. Do you know what I mean? They were, like typically going out and partying and all that. And that wasn't me. It never really was, to be honest. Like I just wasn't interested in that. So it was kind of isolating. Because I had no friends, more or less. Like I did, but they weren't, your close friends. You couldn't talk to them about things. And then COVID happened and it was like complete isolation. Like I knew no one. And they grew away from me as well because they went a different route to me. I was getting closer to God and they were just staying where they were. And it just felt like this big cavern. And then it was only this year, like at the start of this year, that I was like, I need to have a community. I need to know people with the same beliefs and the same, that are going the same path as me. And I reached out to different people, Katie Asko, and she reached out to, Lala. And it was like, I went to the Trinity Society and I went to the UCD Society, even though I don't go there. And they're so welcoming. And that's like, this is now like, the community that I have, this is my new college experience and such, and it was so much better than prior. I mean, college for our age group has been really, really strange because of the lockdown. It hasn't been normal. Friend groups and being, seeing where you can take your religion in college has been completely different.
You mentioned that you studied biomedical sciences, and you said that isn't necessarily the path that you're most interested in, but I guess relating earlier to what you said, that originally you thought that faith and science were incompatible. Can you expand a little bit on like specifically what like scientific aspects, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you think were incompatible with what your perception of the faith was?
Yeah. I suppose I come from a very sciencey family.
Okay.
Like my brother, one does like theoretical physics, which is medicine. It's like really intense science. And I'm not interested at all. But from listening to them and being around them, I would have a lot of scientific influence, and I'd be quite a logical thinker rather than emotional when it came to things, I think because of that. So I was like, logically, like there can't be something out there. I was listening to my science teachers and they're like, we're alone in this world, or maybe there are aliens, and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with that. and I wanted God to be real, and I wanted the truth more than I wanted God to be real, but I did want God to be real. And with science, I kind of just thought, there's like this big bang and all this, and I was like, if all this is theory, all the science is theory, and I think that's the problem, is that nothing is really concrete, and I wanted something that was concrete. And I thought that their theories didn't correlate with what like the Bible was telling me or what people were saying about. It was a lot of just listening to other people and agreeing with them without doing my own research. And I think because I wanted the truth so much, I started doing my own research. But hearing like this lecture about how science and religion complements each other really that like put everything into perspective, that it's not a battle.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything in particular. Maybe just like evolution and stuff. But to be honest, a lot of my logical thought process, because God showed himself to me in a very distinct way, I kind of didn't care. I was like, I actually don't care how we got to this point.
Right.
I was like, I know we're here and I know that God made us. And it's kind of like, I don't need a reason anymore. And I know a lot of people do, because I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned those sort of few friends that you were spending time with when you first joined college. What's your sort of approach with them right now? As in, like, is there a way you bring up these kind of topics? Like, because they also might have sort of similar views that you may have had when you were sort of not practicing, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's very important to not just cut them off in a sense. And I think it's very important to understand that everyone's on a journey and that God loves everyone. And I think that the best way, if you want them to come to God, is to try and show them God through you, because you might be the only path. Like, you might be the only gospel that someone reads.
Right.
And I think if you can treat them in a way that they say, or if you have like this light about you, they might look at that and say, hey, where is that from? They might start questioning if you're able for, like I say, I don't drink. So if they're like, why is that? Like, why are you so okay? Why are you so comfortable not doing that? You can like start telling them about why, and which it's like God, like he gives you that peace that you don't need to be anything. And it's also important to understand that everyone has like this void in them. It's a God-shaped void, hole in their heart. And people are trying to fill it constantly with temporary things. And that won't work. Like, people use drugs, they use alcohol, power, success, all of that money. They're trying to constantly fill this hole in their heart. And it's really sad, because that's what they're doing. And that the only thing that actually will fill their heart is God. So if you can not be annoyed with them, and if you cannot dislike them for that, because you shouldn't, and sometimes it can be difficult, if someone's like acting really different and you're like, here's the truth, and they're just not getting it. But it's important to remember that they are really searching for God, even if they don't know it. And you, like I said, you might be the closest thing they have to hearing the truth.
Yeah. I think we don't even realize it sometimes. Like, I think just being a living example of your faith is sometimes just the best way you can approach evangelization.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. With regards to, I guess, being more open about your faith and being more, I guess, involved in it since the lockdown, like you were saying. Have you ever sort of faced hostility as a result of your faith? And if so, how did you handle that?
Absolutely. Those friends that I had in first year, they didn't want to know me after I became Catholic.
Right.
But I decided that I would just, I'd be there if they wanted to come back, and we would never leave anything hostile, because I do love them, and I would never have walked away from them. But I was never like judgmental, or I never say anything. I just remained like the same, but very much so that they knew I'm Catholic now, and this is what I'm doing. And it's not going to be a problem for our friendship, but they did find that was a problem. And I would say that like in college now, I do have some really great friends that aren't Catholic, but they're okay. They're okay with me being Catholic. They have to be, but they don't mind regardless. A few people would give you like looks, like, you know, if you're saying grace out with them at lunchtime, and they're kind of like, oh,
Right.
or in the group in college, like, you know, the whole class, a lot of them would be very against it.
Okay.
But I think you can't really fight someone who's being nice to you at the same time. Like, if
Yeah.
I mean, trying to be nice to them, they have nothing to argue against.
Yeah.
But there definitely is a little bit of hostility towards me for that.
Okay.
But I don't really care.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really care, to be honest.
Right. That's a good response. I mean, in the first place, it probably had some impact.
A little bit. It was kind of like I wondered if it was me or if it
Okay.
was what I was going for. But I think what it was that I was going a path that must have, like, it would make someone feel guilty if
Okay.
they're watching you and you're not joining in.
Right.
Or you can see what they're doing and you're not joining in with them.
Right. Or their
Um,
perception
And I
was
get that.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I get that, because like it is very difficult nowadays to live the way that God wants us to. Like, the world does not make that easy at all. There's so much going on that we could easily fall and join into things
Yeah.
and get lost. And when you refuse to, people are like, oh, what's that about? And it seems to be more difficult to take our kind of route. And I get why people don't want to do that as well.
Yeah. And when you do sort of face like tough times or whatnot, do you have any, I guess, spiritual practices or any saints in particular that you are fond of turning to?
Always Our Lady, because the Rosary, let me tell you, the Rosary is such a great weapon. I'll call it a weapon because that's what it is. It's amazing. And another saint is Saint Teresa of Avila. I adore her. I think she's amazing. I'd say those two mainly.
Why in particular Saint Teresa of Avila?
I think because when I started my journey, like really leaning into Catholicism, I didn't know how I was supposed to act. I'm kind of someone who talks a lot, and I have a lot to say. And you've heard me today in the studio telling you guys what you should be doing with your studio. So that is like part of who I am. And I thought, oh, I have to be silent. I have to like not have opinions and not have a sense of humor and not be like this or that. And when I read about Saint Teresa of Avila, she's absolutely crazy in the best way possible. She has such a sense of humor and this big personality, and she was able to use it to glorify God. She was able to literally, it's like the way God made her, and he was like, you can use this part of you to like spread the word and like, you know, tell people no when they need to hear no and stuff like that. And it kind of made me feel like God made me this way. Like it kind of allowed me to be myself. She did.
Yeah. Clear.
Yeah. So that's why I love her.
That's cool. Very nice. And you said you really had to take that step yourself to go and find sort of a community around you. And you made that step when you were in college.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about where that sort of left you now? Like, what are you sort of a part of? Are you part of any sort of society? You say you're part of the Laurentian Society.
Yeah.
And what does that sort of...
And I'm more or less part of the
very
movement
busy.
society.
But could you like talk about maybe some of the things that you've been involved in this year?
Yeah. I go to UCD Bible study every week with Alana. She's amazing.
Used to work for you.
Yeah. Does she?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, they're so inviting. They let me into that, which that alone gives you great community, because it's like girls, we're all sitting around the table, we're all like getting to know each other really well. And then you're also learning like more in depth about the Bible, because it's one thing to read it yourself and it's another thing to study it. So that was amazing. And then in the Laurentians, we have like prayer meetings every week. And, you know, afterwards everyone would be like chatting, and it's like you get to know everybody that way. I suppose I don't do a lot as regards like mission work, but I really want to. And you guys in UCD have Focus. And I am thinking about going that route, like joining them or something, because I really love what they do. And it's just so cool. And like since Medjugorje, what I want to do, the Lord has placed in my heart, is to tell everyone about him. And that is like essentially what mission work is. It was like he was like, here, I'm going to give you my light. Now take it home and give it to everyone else. And I think that focus would be a great way to do that. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
That would be cool.
That's so good. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and like even with like some of the Bible studies they do, I think it's so great because it's a means of not only giving scripture to students, but like you said, it's a group of lads or a group of girls around the table. So it's a time of like, you're probably never going to get that anywhere else. Like 5 people who are pretty much the same as you, and you're in the same room, and you can share whatever. And it's just such a very just calm and a very just, it's an environment that you're comfortable sharing what you wouldn't be able to share somewhere else.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah. Good stuff. I think we may.
Yeah, we're just about out of time today, but that was really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That was a really incredible story. For all of our listeners, thank you very much for joining us. If you want to get in contact with us, send any nice messages for Eleanor or any comments or feedback for us, you can text or WhatsApp us at 089-467-2000. You can also call us at 014-123-456. Eleanor, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining us. And until next week, next Saturday at 2 p.m., to everyone listening or watching on YouTube, God bless and take care.
God bless. Bye-bye.